Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today, obviously, FanFest is almost here, big day ahead, but Giants training camp is also ongoing as we speak, and there's been a couple of interesting developments, including a few injuries to keep note of. Nate Solder had to go off the field due to a shoulder issue. A couple of tight ends, I think, also were knocked out. Kadarius Toney being dialed back a little bit, not going as hard as he usually would. So there's a couple of players the Giants are now dealing with in terms of injury, but it's kind of getting a little concerning, this offensive line situation. Are they going to bring somebody in? They probably need to. But we also want to talk about Phil Simms, and he had something to say about the Joe Judge haters, and a couple more other storylines. Before we dive into the good stuff, Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, and I am starting to get at least mildly concerned with all of the injuries that are piling up, because it seems like at least 3 to 4 players today alone have gone inside to the trainers or gone to the sideline with the trainers. Just injuries seem to be piling up, but none of them sound significant. None of them sound severe. To me, it sounds like these players are just getting a little sore. Maybe they're working hard, and this could just be part of Joe Judge's regimen. This could be something that he's expecting as he tries to work them back into football shape and really condition them, because that's something that we know Joe Judge is placing a heavy emphasis on this season. The Giants put the pads on 2 weeks early this year. Last year, they didn't put them on until, I believe, August 17th, and this year they put them on, I believe, August 4th, somewhere around there. So they're really putting an emphasis on conditioning and getting up to football speed, getting into football shape really early this year. So I think that's probably a part of what it is. It's just all of that is causing some injuries here and there. But hopefully none of these are too serious. It doesn't seem like they are. Even when we had the scare with Shane Lemieux, it ended up not being so bad. He was back taking first-team reps with the offense today at left guard. Very exciting development there. But then, of course, we get one lineman in. Another one goes down. Nate Solder goes off to the sideline. We had a couple tight ends with some injuries today, even a couple of receivers. So little cause for concern, but I'm not going to overreact and get too worried. I just think that this is a byproduct of getting back into football shape and conditioning early on in the offseason. So I'm excited. A lot to talk about. Giants released some new uniforms. Probably want to start off with that because I'm really excited to talk about that and see exactly what your thoughts are on the new uniforms in the comments section down below on YouTube.
I mean, straight off the bat, why can't we make the Color Rush uniforms the away uniforms all the time? It's like we have the gray face mask. We have, they transition to the white pants now. But the Color Rush jerseys are freaking awesome. You know what I mean? Those should be our away uniforms. And then just make, I guess you could just say, let's do, if you want to have a unique Color Rush jersey, make it blue. Make it a cool, dark, navy blue. With a white outline. I feel like that would look so cool. And then the white could just be our away jerseys. Our Color Rush jerseys are really just white. They're not really that colorful. So what is so, exciting about that? I don't really know. But they're just so clean. I have the Saquon Barkley one, and it's gorgeous. It is the sexiest jersey I own by a large margin. But like you said, Anthony, talking about these players that are picking up injuries, I'm not overly concerned. And one of the reasons is conditioning shouldn't be that bad. Conditioning for professional athletes shouldn't really be a reason for injuries. This is football. Injuries happen. I think majority of them are probably just because they're playing football. They're getting hit or they're doing weird things with their bodies, contorting in different ways. It's not because they're doing sprints or running laps, which is what Phil Simms said when he was throwing those Joe Judge haters under the bus. He was like, come on, conditioning is kind of funny. It's it brings you together. You're doing this as a team. It's not more of a punishment as it is I guess kind of a disciplinary guideline. You know what I mean? It's a positive reinforcing consequence. You know what I mean? For example, if you were going to punish a player and by punishing him, you were okay, you have to sit out and not do anything. That's a negative reinforcing consequence. But the Giants instead kind of look at it in a positive way. If we're going to deal out consequences and punishments, let's make it beneficial. Let's make it so the players actually gain something from this. And they're gaining more stamina, gaining more physical fitness, which is, in my opinion, a positive thing. So the Giants and Joe Judge aren't doing a bad thing by any means, in my opinion. And I think Phil Simms kind of hit on the head. People are just going out and just way over the top. And we've talked about this multiple times, so I don't want to spend too much time hammering it down. I do want to talk about what happens if Nate Solder in this shoulder issue is anything serious. I do want to talk about the fact, Shane Lemieux coming back and playing with the ones today. That's a good storyline to follow because there's some positivity there. Obviously Shane Lemieux had that knee injury a couple of days ago. He was carted off the field, never a good sign. But the Giants still managed to get him rehabilitated. He's back with the team now. He's playing with the ones, and I think that's a really good thing. Just based on the fact that Zach Fulton's retirement, Joe Looney's retirement, there's a lot of moving pieces on the offensive line right now, and there's not many options, right? I was looking at some free agents yesterday, and the only ones that are really available, David DeCastro, who's basically on the verge of retirement. His ankle or his knee or his foot is in shambles. It's a serious injury that I would not trust, and I don't think he wants to put any more pressure on that. Physically, at least, he's a guy that would come in, run a lap, and be like, you know what, I'm retiring. Screw this. That's like, one of the players that would do that right now for the Giants if they were to bring him in. You have Nick Easton, who, very bad grades overall. And then James Carpenter. Like, anyone that's really available right now isn't probably that reliable, in my opinion. Austin Reiter's the only guy that stands out, but he's a true center. He's never played offensive guard before, so if you're bringing him in, you're really hoping that maybe Jonathan Harrison, who's also was out working with trainers yesterday, can fill in that interior spot. We just don't have the depth at the end of the day. The Giants don't have the depth right now for me to feel confident, and if one guy goes down, if two guys go down, what then? What is Joe Judge doing then? What is this front office doing then? Because there's nobody else unless you're trading for somebody. And who are you trading? I guess you could trade Sterling Shepard, who's out of his deal, but I think he looked phenomenal this camp so far, and that's the player I want to talk about too a little bit. Anthony, what happens if Nate Solder goes down? If those depth pieces are gone? Because everything that I've heard thus far is that the second string offensive line has been in shambles. They've been absolutely horrendous. So how do you supplement that? If one guy goes down, you're putting in a horrendous player or a player who's really not looked so good during camp. What do? You know what I mean? Maybe they try to kick Solder into guard, or maybe they try to move Pert into guard, but I highly doubt they want to do that. What is your solution, if there even is one?
Yeah, neither of those players are going to be a good fit at guard, for the main reason being they're way too tall, they're way too long. It's too tight of a space for someone that large to really be agile enough in and really be able to move players and play well at that position. Like Nate Solder being 6'8", that's a tackle. That is not a guard. Daniel Jones, I understand he's a tall quarterback, but still having him throw directly over a 6'8" offensive lineman, not exactly a formula for success in the passing game. You want to create good passing lanes and windows for your quarterback between the offensive linemen. That becomes a lot more difficult when you have a statue, like a ginormous statue of an offensive lineman right in front of you playing guard. So I don't think Matt Parrott or Nate Solder can really move into guard. Now, in terms of what the Giants should do to gain more offensive line depth, first of all, the Giants need more offensive line depth. They should have had more offensive line depth a week ago, okay? They needed that like yesterday, and they still don't have it, but you look at the market, and it's really slim pickings. There's really not much out there that you can really say would be a good signing. Like, there's a guy, Russell Okung, but how much is he going to cost? He's also 34 years old, and we're not necessarily looking for more tackle depth. We're looking for more interior offensive line depth. Rick Wagner, another tackle. Austin Reiter, a center. James Carpenter, I don't want him on the team. I don't think he's a very good player. He's a guard. Ben Garland is another center, and Nick Easton is another guard. This is the list of available offensive linemen right now, and a couple of those seem to be some viable backups who could fill in as starters if they need to, but for the most part, these are guys who are unsigned for a good reason, right? You don't necessarily want these guys on your team. My opinion on what the Giants should do if they do want to upgrade the offensive line at this point, if they're not in on Austin Reiter, they don't want Austin Reiter on this team, let's wait until final roster cuts, because that's when you're going to see some talented players get cut from some teams and make some really good acquisitions for other teams. You get down to the last week of camp, right before the regular season is about to begin. Teams have to go, I believe, from 80 to 53. Because I believe it's 90 to 85, then 85 to 80, then 80 down to 53, which is a bizarre difference. That's a huge day of cuts. That's going to be severe job losses for numerous NFL players. And that's going to be really sad to watch, but it's also going to be an opportunity. course, there's always a ton of surprises, and it's also an opportunity for some decent players who are surprises that do get cut to land in a better situation with a better team that can make them a starter, because that's usually what happens, right? You get a player who's good, has potential, gets cut from a team because they already have someone better at the position, and it's more cost efficient for them to go with the better player. Or the other way around. The better player is less cost efficient, so they go on with the younger player who's not as good. And then that player gets put onto the waiver wire, and the Giants, being that they finished 6-10, 5-11 last year, whatever it was, I think it was 6-10, they'll have the opportunity to swing at that player on the waiver wire much sooner than any of the other competitive teams that might be looking at that player at the same position. So that's what the Giants should be focusing on now. Develop the in-house talent and wait until final roster cuts, because that's when you can take some really talented players off of the waiver wire and hopefully plug them into your lineup and say, this is a much better player than the one that we had to your lineup and say, this is a much better player than the one that we had previously.
Done always, especially when they're slim pickings. But there's a couple players who have been standing out, and one of them, Anthony just did a fantastic video on, so go check it out. David Sills out of West Virginia. He's been in the league for about 3 years now. Anthony did a whole breakdown of his history, his background, what he's done so far this camp, how good he's been, and what he really offers this offense. And let me tell you, he just caught another touchdown pass. You know what I mean? The guy has been an absolute monster this season. He's getting some reps with the ones. Preseason, Saturday, New York Jets, I expect to see him on that field a lot. You know what I mean? Like, that is a player who I am very high on right now. And we talked about this the other day. We think that Dante Pettis is the odd man out of this wide receiver core. We think that David Sills and John Ross could make that roster. CJ Board's also in the mix. They could bring in they could hold on to an extra wide receiver just because of how good Sills is looking. You know, that's just the reality of his situation right now. Sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do, and David Sills is forcing the Giants' hand right now. He has like 6 touchdown passes. He's been a red zone phenom. I know, Anthony, you talked about this in the podcast in the Tony's takes. The guy had 18 touchdown passes, receptions in one season. Then the next season he had 15 touchdown receptions. Like, we're talking about 33 touchdown receptions in 2 seasons. That is unrivaled, unmatched. He had a reception the other day, jumping over Adoree Jackson and Logan Ryan, okay? That is not easy to do. 2 of our best defenders, you know, jumping over them as a practice squad candidate and making a nice catch and doing it continuously. He is pushing for starting reps. Maybe not starting, but at least reserved reps. And I would not be surprised to see him, at least getting some reps during the regular season. I don't know whether it's injury. Injuries always happen. You know, they're always arising. Kenny Galladay's out right now. They could call on David Sills to come and try and supplement his loss. He's the same size at 6'4". Another thing Anthony pointed out, he has that possession body, but he's a little bit quicker. He's a little bit faster than Kenny Golladay. Not as strong, but he's a little bit quicker. And he's a very sure-handed receiver. I don't think I've ever heard the word drop and David Sills in the same sentence. So he's a very good athlete. He's been following Daniel Jones around this offseason, you know, just basically training with him, getting ready for the upcoming training camp. And he's taken the advantage of it. He's doing a tremendous job. And I think he deserves an opportunity to showcase what he's got. Preseason is that opportunity. If he can put together a couple of nice games, I mean, if you're the Giants, how do you not put him on the active roster, right?
Yeah, I mean, you consider the fact that he's been working really hard with Daniel Jones all offseason long. Again, something else that I talked about at length in that Tony's Takes episode. Like, the dude has just put in more work than anybody. You know, maybe Daniel Jones has put in more work, but David Sills has been there putting in that work with Daniel Jones every single time. Like, David Sills, I'm really impressed with him. I do think that he makes the final 53-man roster, as you were saying, Alex. But another player who is going to rival him for that spot is CJ Board, because CJ Board is known to be a solid contributor on special teams. One thing that I will point out, though, is that David Sills has been taking snaps as a gunner throughout training camp this offseason. They've been practicing him, or getting him to practice in that spot, hopefully making him a contributor on special teams and giving him an edge to make the roster. That's his avenue right now. And yes, I do think that he's going to have to really show out in the preseason. One thing that I'll say is he has been getting a lot of first-team reps throughout training camp, especially with the absence of Kenny Golladay. David Sills has been the one filling in, which kind of tells me they see him as a guy who's going to make this final roster, because David Sills has really been filling in for Kenny Golladay throughout training camp as he's been injured, and he's been really, really impressive doing so. As you mentioned, catching a touchdown from Daniel Jones over Adoree Jackson and Logan Ryan, a play that he made with the first team, getting open in the back of the end zone. And you know what is another thing about that specific clip is that was kind of a timing route. He got to the back of the end zone. Daniel Jones knew exactly where David Sills wanted that pass to be. He put it in the perfect spot, and David Sills was comfortable to go up and get it. They have a strong chemistry already because they've been working together
really good point.
all offseason long. That was a timing thing. That was a I know where you want this ball, so let me put it there thing. And that's exactly what happened there. So that chemistry is already on point with those two. I think that if I had to guess who Daniel Jones's favorite receiver to throw to right now is, I don't even think it's Shep. I don't think it's Slayton.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I think it's David Sills. No, I think it's David Sills, bro, because they have been working tooth and nail all offseason long together, developing a chemistry. And I think that can't go unnoticed. Like, of course, Jones has played in a regular season with Shepard, but I'm saying right now who he's most comfortable with after playing with them all offseason, I think it's David Sills. I think he's feeling most comfortable right now throwing to David Sills, and that's why you're seeing him get so many first-team reps, and ultimately why I think he will make the final roster. But as we mentioned, Kenny Golladay absent, finally working back today. We did see him on the sideline working with the jugging machine. He wasn't inside with the trainers. He was outside. Just a sign that he is healing properly, and he will be back on the field probably by the end of the week.
At least that's what we hope. Kenny Golladay obviously dealing with an injury, but it shouldn't be a prolonged thing. I think it's a left hamstring, right? So that's an injury he's had in the past. So they're really just being careful with their big investment. 4 years, $74 million. Be careful with your big investment. Make sure he's 100% healthy. But like you mentioned, David Sills, that's the thing that also an underrated factor that might contribute toward him making this roster, his connection with Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones likes him, it's over. Like, he's on the roster. You know what I mean? You're not going to cut your quarterback's favorite target, a guy you've been working with. And I think David Sills did a good thing by himself and really was proactive, making sure he built that chemistry with DJ, so it proved to be a talking point during camp. And I think that's a big factor, a big point that you brought up that really is going to contribute toward him making this roster. And I think he's on pace to do it. He just has to do it in live games. Practice is practice. You got to do it in the real thing. And that's the next step for him. So hopefully he can take advantage of that opportunity on Saturday and then the next couple of preseason games. But I do want to talk about one final player, and that's Adoree Jackson. Adoree Jackson has low-key had a really nice camp. And let me throw in as well, Darnay Holmes had an interception today. He has had a couple interceptions this camp. He's also looked really good when he's not being torched by Sterling Shepard. But Shepard's been possessed lately. Guy's been killing everybody. Adoree Jackson, though, he's looked really good. They've given him the proper amount of days off to make sure his body's rested and healed. And I think that for the most part, he's proving to be a good, solid investment for us that is going to lock down the opposite side of the field with James Bradberry. Anthony, hearing the positivity regarding Adoree Jackson and how he's been performing, are you pretty optimistic this secondary is going to be really good to open the year? Because I know they've been shutting our offense down, and like what we want to say is, the offense is struggling, and I don't even think that is really the case. I think it's more or less like you're going up against a top 5 secondary, and that's the best way to get better. The best way to get better is to face off against a top-tier defense, because it's only going to make you better and more prepared, because when you're taking on mediocre defenses, which the average team is nowhere close to how good the Giants defense is, in my opinion, just talent-wise, you're going to be able to take advantage of them a lot easier because you know that you're already practicing against the best. So when you're looking at Adoree Jackson, Anthony, how optimistic are you that he's going to be that perfect pairing next to Bradberry, just based on his camp so far?
I mean, Adoree Jackson has been balling out through camp. He's been getting interceptions, forcing fumbles, recovering them. He recovered a fumble that he said he would have taken to the house in a live game. He's been playing really well, and he's looked like that potentially elite duo with James Bradberry that we were hoping he would be when the Giants signed him. I've heard Adoree Jackson's name more than I've heard James Bradberry throughout training camp. It sounds like he is really impressing the beat writers, the coaching staff. He's just playing at a very high level. He's looking like a top-tier cornerback, which is exactly what we were hoping for. Of course, there were a lot of question marks because we were like, well, he's coming off of an injury. He hasn't really been playing too much the past 2 years. Will he actually be able to step in and be the player that the Giants hope for him to be? So far, he has been. He's been exactly what we've been hoping for him to be. He's been balling out, being a very capable starting outside cornerback opposite of James Bradberry. More than capable. He's been very, very good. And I think that's really exciting. Adoree Jackson just stepping in and already being one of the best players on the defense. And he hasn't played a snap yet in the regular season for the defense. That's great. That's super encouraging. And, of course, I think that this secondary, I think you're right, Alex. The struggles that we're seeing from the offense here and there through training camp, I think it's just because the secondary is so damn good. I do believe, like, book it right now. This is a top 5 secondary this year. That's how I feel. I'm feeling really confident in that. You're seeing guys, young guys who were struggling last year. We're good, but we're struggling. Not struggling so much this year. They're just better. Darnay Holmes being a prime example, getting multiple interceptions through practice, breaking on balls this year like he wasn't able to last year. Didn't have the football IQ yet, wasn't used to the game. But this year he's breaking on these passes, he's making deflections, he's making interceptions, and he's balling out. Shout out to Brian Deepak's Academy, Brian Walker, of course, working with Darnay all offseason long, making sure that he's ready for the season, ready to take his game to the next level. And it seems like Darnay has absolutely done that. It seems like he has taken his game to the next level, and I'm super excited to see exactly what he can do this year and how well he can perform in the upcoming season, because I think he's going to be a key piece of this defense.
100% agree, guys. But thank you so much for tuning into Fireside Giants. I will leave you with this one piece of information that made my heart really happy. Jalen Hurts is experiencing inconsistencies. That's all I want to hear, man. Just bad quarterback play from the Eagles. And it's so funny because I saw like a poll.
No surprise there.
Yeah, no surprise there. I mean, he had a 50% completion rate last year, absolute dog duty. But I will say this. A lot of Eagles fans think that they're going to win the division. I don't know where they're coming up with this. Like, as Giants fans, we're pretty, we're optimistic, but we also are, temper our expectations. Like, we didn't expect to win the division last year. Like, we haven't expected to win for a couple years now. This is the only year where I feel pretty confident that we're going to be in the running, us in Washington. Eagles fans are 100% Eagles are winning. We have no quarterback. That's basically the logic. But nonetheless, really appreciate you guys tuning in to Fireside Giants here. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. As always, my friends, we'll catch you guys tomorrow. Hopefully some new headlines. I know FanFest will be covering that from afar, but hopefully they'll do another big event in the future, and we'll be there to meet you guys. We do want to set up a cool little maybe fan engagement thing for the Falcons game, Eli Manning's Ring of Honor, or jersey retirement game. We do want to meet up with some people, maybe have a tailgate, really have some fun, and enjoy that big day for Eli and his family. So really appreciate the support. As always, my friends, season is right around the corner. We've got so much good stuff. Make sure to keep tuning in, and you're not going to want to miss what we got. So have an awesome day, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.